All right, God's Not Dead, Part 2. Let's actually look at the characters' arguments. Okay, to begin, he starts off with the central argument that we always hear, which is completely befuddling and perplexing and just leads absolutely nowhere philosophically. And that's the idea that, yes, he admits up front that it is true, that he cannot prove that God exists. However, the professor can't prove that God does not exist, which right then and there should end the entire movie. All the professor really had to do was say, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. By that same logic, you can't prove that Allah doesn't exist. Therefore, Allah's correct. It's a completely absurd assumption. And in fact, my total argument, this is some advice to people that are non-theists. If you ever get sort of henpecked by these people about why you don't believe in God, just come out and say, you know what? I don't believe in God for every single reason you don't believe in Allah. Give them one reason why they don't believe in Allah, that's why you don't believe in God, and if they disagree, that makes them logically a hypocrite. So that could be the end of the movie right there in 5 minutes, because you can't explain it and he realizes it's complete logical paradox and it's complete nonsense and it's circular reasoning ad infinitum. But no, he lets him keep talking, and of course that brings us to a story about the Big Bang. Now, the Big Bang, this Josh character argues, is actually not contradictory to the teachings of the book of Genesis whatsoever. In fact, he comes out and says that the Big Bang happening, the projection of all this universal matter, actually syncs up quite nicely with what Genesis says, which is, and God said, let there be light. But oh no, that's selective interpretation, because if you ever actually read the book of Genesis, the first two sentences of the Bible clearly contradict what this guy just said, because it's not Genesis verse 1, chapter 1, God said, let there be light. Oh no, go back and read Genesis 1.1 and Genesis 1.2. What does it say? It says that in the beginning, the earth was dark and it was void and it was without form. So the waters and the earth and all that stuff is there. It's just dark. So according to Genesis, there actually was universal matter before God said let there be light, which under the hypothesis of the film was the Big Bang itself. So clearly, the Big Bang and the Genesis story of creation cannot be referring to the same thing, because per the Genesis explanation, there was universally structured matter, including complex compounds like water, before the Big Bang itself. So right there, his argument, done. It's over. There shouldn't be a movie after that point. It's done, because his entire premise is faulty. He's even going against his own canon of his own text, but let's him keep talking. He already dug that hole. And he keeps saying that, actually, we know the universe is expanding now, but actually the Bible told us that the universe is expanding. Why? Because there's like 16 instances in the Bible of someone using the term stretching or bowing as figurative language to describe how God made the universe. So there's not actually a scientific explanation as to why the Bible is correct. He's just saying that because of that figurative language, which he equates with being expanding the universe, therefore the Bible must be correct, which is just absurd. And then we go to the whole story of God being the uncreated first cause. He said that since God caused the Big Bang, nothing can cause God because he is the prima facie first cause. And I don't even have to get into that argument. It's just dumb. If God can be the first cause, then why can't the Big Bang be the first cause? It's just a dumb argument, and people are still using it, and no one gets anywhere. And Josh's excuse, once again, is the fact that he says God is actually the uncreated first creator, which is a complete logical paradox. You can't be an uncreated creation. But, you know what, we're not really striving for scientific accuracy here. And then we go to Josh's second argument. That was his first attempt to woo over people from camp atheism, and camp science, and camp reason. In which he says that Stephen Hawking, he cherry picks a quote from him, who says that he believes that the universe needed to be created. So the universe created itself, but that can't be true because matter cannot spring from nothingness, even though his entire argument is God sprung from nothingness. So you see right there, it's completely paradoxical. You're not making any headway here. If you're saying this can happen, then clearly the stated scientific principle can happen as well. Now all this kind of boils down to a simple thing that we don't know. We don't know how the matter before the Big Bang came to be. We might figure it out someday, we might not. But there's a whole lot more to it, a lot of technology we need, a lot of expansion of the scientific knowledge that we know, that we need to know to figure out how they came to be. So basically we're both kind of taking guesses here. So the idea is, we can't discredit the Christian argument, but by that same token they can't discredit the scientific argument, and of course all of the jillion other creation myths or creation theories out there, like the one believed by those of the Islamic faith or the Buddhist faith or any of these other, nativistic traditions. So you can't discredit all of them. So what makes yours the truth? Well, it comes down to a matter of faith, which is basically assuming things without actually having first-hand fact or existential knowledge or empirical evidence to support your claims, which is generally pretty bad. So then we get to the point about evolution, and this one is really great. You're going to love this one. He says that cherry-picking Darwin, that 3.8 billion years, which is when life first began showing up on Earth, is far, 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 far too early to represent something that isn't a jump in evolution. And he demonstrates this by showing a giant clock of the entire universal expansion going back to 14 billion. And he has this little tiny wedge representing 3.8 billion out of the 14 billion years the universe has been. And it's completely statistically wrong. Like, there's no way like that can be an adequate representation of anything in pictorial form. But that's just absolute nonsense. You can crack open any biology book and see why that's a completely faulty way of looking at anything. So anyway, he's going to this sole sort of Michael Behe argument, the guy that wrote Darwin's Black Box, where here's the fallacy. The fallacy that this guy's believing is because something is complex and has a standard form, therefore it has to be the hallmark of creation. Now I'm about to use the absolute most curt simile you've ever heard in your life, but this is a great way to sort of personify why that's a bad argument. Let's say you eat a lot of Taco Bell. I love Taco Bell, by the way. Breakfast menu, not so much, but whatever. But you eat a lot of Taco Bell, and suddenly, a couple hours later, you have to go take a bowel movement. So you sit down on the throne, and you expel what you need to expel, and what do you know? It has a certain defined shape. Now here's my question. Did you personally design your feces to come out looking like that? Well, not. It exists, right? It's created. Therefore, it has to have a creator, right? Well, no, it wasn't. It's because of just all these different physical forces. It's gravity and exertion and the biology of your own body. And all these things come together to create a certain shape, which you could mathematically map out if you want to get into it, using things like trajectory speeds and weight and even the alignment of the body. So these things can actually be figured out and sort of applied using known physics. However, the argument there is, well, we can't do that because it's something complex in nature and something that has a definite form. Therefore, that must be the hallmark of a creator. So does that mean that if I drop a turd that's shaped like an S, I designed it like an S myself? I don't think so. So anyway, that's really bad arguments that are against the Big Bang Theory as not being caused by God and evolution as a whole. But that's not the most offensive part of the movie. The most offensive part of the movie, and the part that absolutely made me despise this entire thing and everyone associated with it, is the third and final argument that this Josh character has, the professor, and that's the idea that morality can only exist with a creator in mind. What he says is that evil is a result of free will. You see, God has this plan for all of us, right? He wants us to go out and do a certain thing, but we have free will, the ability to say, no, we don't want to do that. We want to go off and do our own thing and sin and go to hell or whatever. Which, okay, we'll say that's solid. Logically, it's permissible. Except for one thing. He also says, wait, hold on, that God has a plan for all of us because he's all-powerful, all-knowing, and omniscient, and he will kind of push you around until you get to a certain point where you acknowledge the creator is the one true creator. So here's sort of the big, gigantic, gaping hole here. If you have free will to act as an independent agent, yet you're constantly moved around by the behest of this all-knowing, all-powerful, a manipulative super being, then how can you have free will whatsoever? You don't. That's completely contradictory to the idea of having free will, because everything's planned out, everything's moved by some gigantic super force, and your own thoughts and your own actions aren't actually your own. They've been designed by this gigantic super creator as part of some elaborate, long-in-the-tooth grandiose experiment that was mapped out 14 billion years before you were born. How do you have free will with that? That's just completely paradoxical, and you can't actually address that scientifically or philosophically without getting into really, really out there metaphysics, and we don't get into metaphysics. And of course, he goes on saying that you can't have morality without God, because without God, everything is permissible, which is not only offensive, it's borderline fascistic. What you're saying there is that the only kind of morality that could possibly exist is the one decided by your Bible, your theocratic doctrine, which contradicts itself, that's filled with hypocrisy, that's filled with a bunch of logical errors, that has led to the deaths of millions and millions of people, that only your subjective idea of morality stemming from this archaic text is the only way that one can be moral or just or have positive attributes. And this is something you see clearly misrepresented in the entire film. All the Atheist characters are one-dimensional. They're greedy and self-serving and manipulative and lying, and they only care about themselves, and they're inherently nihilistic, when the fact of the matter is it's really Christianity which is the ultimate nihilistic philosophy. That's the one where there is absolutely no inherent meaning to life whatsoever. The only thing that matters is whether or not you accept Jesus Christ as your Savior, so that when you die and enter this totally undetermined, non-existent plane outside of existence, let me restate that one. This plane of existence outside of the existence that we know, that no one has ever seen, that cannot possibly be verified by any empirical knowledge, that if you don't do everything that we tell you to, then you're going to burn in hell for all eternity. Now, which one sounds a little bit oppressive there to you? The one where they're telling you that only their idea of morality, which is complete nonsense, because look at all the religions out there that have their own definition of morality, which, what do you know, sync up kind of with Christian morality. A lot of the tenets of Buddhism about charity and altruism and are similar to that of Islam and Christianity and Judaic religions, and the pagan rituals too. They all kind of have the same sort of idea of morality. So if only the morality of God is the true morality, then how come all these other non-Christian religions have some of the same tenets? So this idea that you can't really actually be moral and loving and caring and considerate and humanistic, or just an all-around decent person, unless you adhere to this philosophy yourself, isn't just kind of wrong-headed. That's actually clearly prejudiced and extraordinarily dictatorial. So for an entire movie that's about the oppression of statist regimes, especially liberal atheists, the entire Christian outlook is actually 20 times more despotic. But once again, we don't talk about the inherent hypocrisy there about this incredibly life deconfirming religion that's ultimately nihilistic and prone to subjugation. But that's not the point of the movie. So anyway, that's what you're missing with God's Not Dead. That's the arguments that it puts forward. Those are the arguments that can be easily torn down and seen as fallacious or wrong-headed or just plain stupid. And if you haven't seen the movie, I don't want you to give money to these people because I just told you everything that happened. It's a dumb movie outside of the faulty arguments and the really offensive politicking. It's just not well acted, and I'm really wondering just how much money Dean Cain and Kevin Sorbo must own to sign up for it. It must be a lot in back taxes. But there you go. That's just one of the many films that's part of this new cross-exploitation movement. You've got that Heaven is for Real crap coming out in a couple of months or weeks or whenever. And if stuff like this has been going on forever, it's the whole neocon straight-to-DVR response to, I don't know, whatever. Because apparently reality itself has a atheistic liberal bias. I don't really know much what else to tell you. It's a horrible movie with a horrible message, with horrible reasoning, and if you think it's the truth, you're probably in a whole lot more trouble than we are. So that's God's Not Dead. Well, God may not be dead, but definitely the logic of this film is brain dead badly.